My name is Clara Voss. I'm 38 years old. And on the last night of my mother's life, my brother locked me out of room 312. For 41 days, I had brought Mom soup in a green thermos, because that was the only food she still tried to swallow when the nausea was bad. Marcus stood between me and the hospice door with his hand flat against the frame, like he owned the building. He looked at the nurse and said, "Go home, Clara. She asked for family tonight." My mother was dying behind that door. Her house was already being discussed like a prize, and I was holding a thermos that still had steam coming from the lid. I did not scream. I did not push past him. I asked the nurse to write down that I was there. 12 days later, a blue envelope arrived that made Marcus wish he had let me into that room. I won't tell you yet what was inside, because the part that mattered most was not the paper itself. It was the look on my brother's face when he realized Mom had been keeping records too. I sat by the vending machine that night until the soup went cold. The machine was one of those older ones with a humming light behind scratched plastic. It sold pretzels, gum, powdered donuts, and small bags of chips that curled at the corners when they got stuck. I remember that because grief sharpens the wrong things. You forget what you said, but you remember the pattern on the floor tile. Room 312 was around the corner to the left. Every few minutes I heard footsteps, a cartwheel, the soft chime of a call button. The murmur of nurses using voices meant not to wake anyone. I had been there so often that one of the night aides knew I liked my coffee with 2 creamers and no sugar. My mother's name, Ruth Voss, was written on the whiteboard inside that room in blue marker. Under it, until that night, the line for primary contact had my name. Marcus changed that. He did it quietly. That was his gift. He did not need to make a scene when he could make a rule. He told the nurse there had been family tension, that Mom had asked for a peaceful final night, that I had been upsetting her with paperwork. He said it in the voice he used at banks, funeral homes, and church luncheons. Calm, heavy, responsible. The nurse looked sorry. That was what hurt, not suspicious. "Sorry, I'm her daughter," I said. Marcus sighed, like I had embarrassed him by making him repeat himself. "Not tonight," he said. That detail stayed with me. Not tonight. Like family was a shift someone could cancel. I looked at the door. I looked at the visitor list, clipped to the small metal holder outside the room. I could see the edge of the paper, but not the names. I could see Marcus's shoulder. I could see Aunt Denise near the nurse's station, turning her purse strap around and around in her hand. For 1 second, she looked at me like she might help. Then Marcus said, "Denise," not loudly. "Just enough." She lowered her eyes. That was when I understood I was not waiting for someone to do the right thing. I was watching them decide not to. So I sat down by the vending machine with the green thermos between my feet. I texted my coworker Noelle, not because she could fix anything, but because I needed someone in the world to know where I was. "Room 312. Marcus won't let me in." She answered in less than a minute, "I'm coming." I stared at those words until they blurred. I thought the worst thing Marcus took from me was goodbye. I was wrong, but not in the way I expected. Welcome back to the Madeline Files, where the quiet part of the story finally gets said out loud. If you've ever been the one who carried the keys, paid the bill, made the appointment, brought the food, and still got treated like extra furniture when the room got important, this story is for you. Listen closely to the dates, the signatures, and the small pineapple everyone ignored. Sometimes the person who does not argue is not helpless. Sometimes she is just waiting for the truth to become official. I grew up in a house where Marcus was charming and I was useful. That sounds simple, but it took me years to say it without apologizing. Marcus was 4 years older than me, broad-shouldered, handsome in a way adults noticed, and very good at entering a room late with flowers. He had a smile that made people forgive him before he explained what he had done. If he forgot Mother's Day, he came the next week with a hanging biscuit and a story about work. If he borrowed money, he called it a temporary bind. If he missed dinner, Mom wrapped a plate and said he was probably tired. I was the one who noticed when the electric bill doubled. I was the one who learned which burner on the stove ran too hot. I was 10 when I started checking the porch after storms because Mom hated going outside in the rain. I was 12 when she began saying, "Clara, can you remind me?" And "Clara, you're so good with details." in the same tone other mothers used for praise. I liked being good at things. I still do. I liked the feel of a problem settling under my hands. A misplaced receipt, a missing form, a doctor's office that had billed the wrong insurance. I could make sense of those things. People were harder. My father left when I was in middle school. Not dramatically, no slammed doors, no new family across town. He just became smaller inside our life until one morning, Mom said he had taken a job in Kansas City and needed space to think. He thought for the rest of my childhood. After that, Marcus became Mom's proof that she had not failed. He was the son who looked like Dad but stayed. He could make her laugh when she was crying over bank statements. He could say, "Come on, Ruthie, don't look at me like that." And she would soften, even when she should have stayed angry. I became the one who kept the bank statements from becoming emergencies. At 16, I had a notebook with Mom's passwords written in pencil. At 17, I knew how to call the mortgage company and sound older. At 19, when Marcus dropped out of community college and moved back home, Mom told me not to judge him. "Your brother means well," she said. "You know how he is." I did know how he was. He was the kind of person who used love as an explanation for damage. He forgot, but he loved you. He lied, but he was scared. He took, but he meant to give back. He vanished, but his heart was good. I was the kind of person who stayed, and somehow staying made me less interesting. Being needed is not the same as being chosen. I did not learn that all at once. I learned it in pieces. I learned it at Christmas, when Marcus arrived 2 hours late with a bottle of wine and everyone laughed, while I was in the kitchen scraping burned sugar off the bottom of a pan. I learned it when Mom had her first serious fall in the driveway. Marcus promised to install a rail by the back steps, forgot for 3 weeks, and then told everyone at Easter he had been meaning to do it. I called a handyman and paid cash. I learned it when Mom introduced me to people from church as my practical one, then introduced Marcus as my heart. The practical one becomes a shelf. People put things on you and call it trust. I became a title abstractor after college. Most people do not know what that means. Marcus liked to say I filed paper for strangers. I searched land records. I traced property histories. I read deeds, liens, releases, probate transfers, easements, and mortgages with coffee rings on the copies. I knew how one wrong date could hold up a closing. I knew how a signature could matter 20 years after the person who wrote it was gone. There was comfort in records. A deed did not smile and pretend. A notary stamp did not say it loved you while changing the story. A document either held or it did not. Mom used to ask me about my work when she wanted help with something. Not in a cruel way, more in a distracted way, like my job was a drawer she opened when she needed scissors. "Clara, you know about house things," she would say. "Can you look at this?" I looked at tax assessments, insurance letters, a notice from the county about drainage. Once, a roofing contract Marcus had told her was, basically, a sure thing, even though the company had complaints under 3 different names. When I warned her, Marcus rolled his eyes. "You and your little paper trails," he said. He said it with a laugh, so I laughed too. I should have known then. Marcus married Kendra when he was 36. She was pretty in a polished way, always wearing cream-colored sweaters that looked expensive and never seemed to snag. She called my mother Miss Ruth for the first year and brought store-bought pies in glass dishes she wanted returned. Kendra understood Marcus very quickly. She understood that he could be steered if the steering looked like admiration. "Your mom listens to you," she would tell him in front of me. Mom would beam. I would be holding a grocery bag or a stack of mail or a list of medications after one of her cardiology appointments. Aunt Denise was Mom's younger sister. She wore bright scarves and carried peppermints in her purse. She believed every family problem could be solved by lowering your voice and not embarrassing the men. She loved me, I think. That was part of the problem. She loved me in ways that cost her nothing. "Your brother just needs patience," she told me once after Marcus forgot to take Mom for an eye surgery follow-up. I had left work early to get Mom there before the office closed. "Patience from who?" I asked. Denise patted my hand. "You're strong, honey." Strong was another word they used when they wanted me to keep hurting quietly. When Mom got sick, it did not begin as a movie kind of sickness. There was no one dramatic phone call, There were appointments, weight loss, a scan, a second scan, a doctor with kind eyes who used the word spread and then paused like silence could soften it, pancreatic cancer. I remember Mom touching the edge of the exam table paper with one finger. It made a crinkling sound. Marcus was not there. He had a work conflict. Later, he told everyone he had wanted to come, but Clara had handled the medical stuff better. That was how he did it. He turned absence into praise. For a while, there were treatments, then side effects, then smaller goals. Keep food down, walk to the mailbox, sleep without pain, make it to May, make it through June. By late summer, the doctors started saying comfort. Mom moved into Briarfield Hospice on a Wednesday afternoon in room 312. I remember the number because I wrote it on so many forms. Her room had a window facing a narrow courtyard with 3 hydrangea bushes and a bird bath that never seemed to have birds in it. The walls were pale beige. There was a recliner by the bed and a small shelf where I kept lotion, tissues, lip balm, a comb, and the framed photo of Mom standing in front of her house the year she paid off the mortgage. The house was a blue ranch on Alder Street with white shutters and a stubborn patch of mint by the back steps. It was not fancy, but it was hers. She bought it after Dad left, with a mortgage that terrified her and a determination she never bragged about. I had helped paint the hallway. Marcus had carved his initials into the garage workbench and then denied it. During those hospice weeks, my life became small and exact. I worked from 7 to 3:30. I went home, changed my shirt, made soup, drove to Briarfield, signed in, washed my hands, and sat with Mom until visiting hours softened into night. Sometimes she slept the whole time. Sometimes she wanted me to read from old magazines. Sometimes she wanted the television on with no sound. On good evenings, she drank soup from a handled mug, one careful swallow at a time. The green thermos had belonged to my grandmother. It was dented near the bottom, and the handle squeaked. Mom said it kept chicken soup warmer than anything new. "Bring the green one tomorrow," she whispered once. "It keeps things warm," so I did. For 41 days, that thermos rode in my passenger seat wrapped in a towel. Chicken broth with rice, butternut squash soup, tomato with cream when she said she wanted something bright. The nurses joked that I should open a cafe in the family lounge. Marcus came 6 times in those 41 days before the final night. I know because I saw the guest book. Twice he came with Kendra. Once he came with Aunt Denise and took a picture of himself holding Mom's hand. He posted it, with the caption, "Hardest season of my life." He stayed 22 minutes. I know because I was in the parking lot answering an insurance call when he arrived, and I passed him at the elevator when he left. I did not hate him then, that is important. I was tired, I was angry sometimes. But hate takes energy, and mine was going to medication schedules and spoonfuls of soup. One evening, around day 29, Mom asked me about the deed drawer. I was rubbing lotion into her hands. Her skin had become thin and cool, blue at the veins. "What drawer?" I asked. "At home," she said. "Hall cabinet. Bottom drawer." "The one with the appliance manuals?" She nodded, then closed her eyes like that had taken effort. "What about it?" Marcus asked. I stopped rubbing. "When?" She opened her eyes and looked toward the window. "Last week, maybe. Maybe before." What did he ask? Where things were. "What things, Mom?" She got irritated then, not at me exactly, but at her body for making every sentence a hill. "House things." I felt something small and cold move through my stomach. "Did he ask you to sign anything?" "No." Then, after a moment, "Not yet." I sat very still. She squeezed my fingers weakly. "You keep receipts, don't you?" I almost smiled because it sounded like Mom. Practical Clara. Paper trail Clara. "Yes," I said. "I keep receipts." Good, I thought she was drifting. Later, I would realize she was organizing. 2 days after that, Marcus texted me. "Don't bother Mom with paperwork. She needs peace." I looked at that message in the hospice parking lot, with my keys still in my hand. "What paperwork?" I wrote back. He did not answer. That night, Mom was sleeping when I got there. I sat beside her and listened to the oxygen machine breathe for her in soft pushes. On her tray table was a cup of ice chips, a folded washcloth, and the little notebook I used for questions. Someone had moved it. I always left it under the lotion bottle. It was beside the tissue box. That detail stayed with me. The next morning, before work, I stopped at Mom's house to water the plants. Evie Calder was on her porch next door, wearing a blue housecoat and holding a mug with both hands. Evie was 71, widowed, and had lived beside Mom for 18 years. She had a quiet face and sharp eyes. She was the kind of neighbor who noticed when trash cans stayed out too long and brought them in without mentioning it. "Clara," she called. I walked over. "How's Ruth this morning?" "Sleeping more," I said. Evie nodded. "She was tired when I saw her Tuesday." I frowned. "Tuesday, Marcus brought her by for a bit. Said she wanted to see the house." I had not known that. Mom had been too weak to sit up for long on Tuesday. I remembered because I had fed her 3 spoonfuls of soup, and then she fell asleep with the 4th cooling in the mug. "What time?" I asked. "Late morning, maybe 11. He helped her inside. She was only here half an hour." Evie looked down into her coffee. "He wanted the spare key." "Did Mom give it to him?" "No. Ruth told him I had one for emergencies, and he came over asking like it was already his." Evie's mouth tightened. "I told him emergencies usually introduce themselves." Despite everything, I almost laughed. What did he say? That family should have access. There it was again. As a key. Family as a door. Family as something he could hold in his hand. I thanked Evie and went inside Mom's house. The hall cabinet was just where it had always been, under the framed print of a sailboat none of us had ever liked. In the bottom drawer were appliance manuals, old warranties, a folder labeled roof, another labeled tax, and a packet of photographs from before I was born. I did not remove anything, I only looked. The folder marked deed was not there. I stood in the hall with the drawer open and heard the refrigerator hum in the kitchen. I told myself Mom might have moved it. I told myself Marcus might have only been curious. I told myself many things because my mother was dying, and suspicion felt ugly beside that fact. But when I left, I took a picture of the drawer. At work that day, I could not focus. I had a stack of property searches on my desk, 2 probate transfers, and 1 old lien from 1987 that should have been released before half the county was born. Usually that kind of puzzle steadied me. That day, every deed looked like a warning. Noelle Park worked at the desk across from mine. She was 40, divorced, funny in a dry way, and the only person at the office who could tell when I had not eaten. She set a granola bar beside my keyboard. "You have the face," she said. "What face?" "The face where someone has done something stupid and you're deciding whether to become a detective." I opened the granola bar but did not eat it. My brother asked my dying mother where the house papers were. Noelle did not make a shocked sound. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. She waited. "And?" she asked. He told me not to bother her with paperwork. Except I hadn't mentioned paperwork. Noelle leaned back. "You want me to say maybe it's nothing?" "No, good. Because maybe it's not nothing." I wrote Marcus's name beside a date for the first time that afternoon. Not in an official way, not in a revenge way. On a plain sheet of copy paper, I wrote, August 18, Marcus took Mom to house, asked Evie for spare key. August 20, texted me about paperwork I didn't mention. August 21, deed folder missing from hall cabinet. Then I folded the paper and put it in my purse. For the next week, I kept doing what I had been doing. Soup, work, hospice, laundry, insurance calls, Mom's mail, her plants, her prescriptions. Her little pile of nightgowns washed in unscented detergent because everything smelled too strong to her now. Marcus became nicer in public and shorter in private. If a nurse was in the room, he called me sis. If we were alone in the hallway, he asked whether I had worked through my control issues. "Mom doesn't need all this hovering," he said one evening near the family lounge. I had just finished changing the pillowcase because Mom had spilled water. She asked me to come. She asks everyone to come. "No," I said. "She doesn't." His face changed for half a second. "Not much, just enough." "You think being here every day means you own this," he said. "Own what?" "All of it. The grief, the decisions." "Mom." I looked at him. "I think being here every day means I'm here every day." He smiled without warmth. "You always did know how to make yourself look necessary." That one landed. I wish it had not. I went back into Mom's room and sat beside her until she woke. She looked at me for a long time. "You've been crying," she said. "Allergies." "Bad liar." I laughed once quietly. Her fingers moved on the blanket. I put my hand under them. "Clara," she said, "if Marcus says I wanted something, you check." I leaned closer. "Wanted what?" "Anything." "What did he ask you, Mom?" She closed her eyes. "He wants easy." That was all she had energy for. I wrote that down too. The hospice staff liked Marcus, not because they knew him, but because he arrived clean and sad at convenient times. He shook hands. He asked questions that sounded caring if you did not notice. He never knew the answers to the previous ones. How was her appetite today? He asked a nurse once. The nurse glanced at me because she knew I had been tracking it. Better with Clara's soup, she said. Marcus put his hand over his heart. She always was stubborn about eating for me, he said. For him. I was standing there with the empty green thermos in my tote bag. That night, I requested a copy of Mom's hospice contact sheet. Not the medical chart, just the administrative information. Primary contact, authorized visitors, emergency numbers. I told myself I wanted to make sure everything was correct. The social worker, Bethany, printed it for me the next day. My name was primary contact. Marcus was secondary. Aunt Denise was listed for family updates. Kendra was not listed. I put the copy in a folder at home labeled Mom, Hospice. Noelle saw the folder 2 days later when she came over after work with soup for me, which felt almost funny in a sad way. Mine came in a plastic deli container. She put it on my kitchen counter and looked at the piles. "You're building something," she said. "I don't know what. You don't have to know what you're building yet. Just keep it clean." So I did. I made folders. Receipts, voicemails, texts, hospice forms, funeral preferences, house notes. It felt wrong at times, like I was preparing for a fight before my mother was gone. Then Marcus would say something like, "We'll all need to be realistic about the house," and the wrong feeling would pass. Mom faded in pieces. Her voice became thinner. Her hands stopped reaching for the cup. She slept through entire visits. When she was awake, she sometimes said things that sounded random but were not. "Evie knows where the good scissors are. Don't let him throw away the porch chairs." The blue hydrangea never did bloom right. Once, she opened her eyes and said, "Did you bring the green one?" I held up the thermos. Her mouth tried to smile. "My girl," she whispered. I had waited all my life for those 2 words to be enough. They were and they were not. On the afternoon before her last night, Bethany pulled me aside. She had a folder pressed to her chest and that hospice face people wear when they are trying to be gentle and direct at the same time. "Clara," she said, "you may want to stay close tonight." My body knew before my mind did. "How close?" "She's changing." I called Marcus from the parking lot. He did not answer. I texted him. "Bethany says tonight may be important. I'm going home to make soup and get Mom's nightgown. Please come if you want to see her," he replied, 27 minutes later. "I'll handle tonight." I stared at those 3 words. Then another message came. "Don't make this about you." I put my phone face down on the passenger seat. At home, I made chicken soup because that was what my hands knew how to do. Broth, soft carrots, a little rice, parsley because Mom liked the green floating on top. I filled the thermos. I folded a clean nightgown with tiny blue flowers. I packed lip balm, socks, and the photo of her house because she had asked for it the day before. When I arrived at Briarfield, the front desk volunteer looked uncomfortable. "Hi, Clara." "Hi, Janet." She did not slide the sign-in sheet toward me the way she usually did. My hands tightened around the thermos handle. "Is Mom awake?" "I think you should check with the nurse." The hallway to room 312 felt longer than usual. The lights were dimmed. Someone had placed a cart of folded blankets near the linen closet. I could hear a television from another room, a game show with low applause. At Mom's door, the visitor list paper had been replaced. Marcus stood beside it. He wore a navy sweater I had given him 3 Christmases before. Kendra was behind him, scrolling on her phone. Aunt Denise sat in one of the hallway chairs with a tissue balled in her fist. "What's going on?" I asked. Marcus looked at the thermos. "You brought food?" She asked for soup. "She can't eat." I know, that bothered him. My knowing things bothered him. I reached for the door. He stepped in front of me. "The nurse said we're keeping it limited tonight." Limited to who? Immediate family. I almost did not understand because the sentence had no place to land. "I'm her daughter." He looked past me at the nurse coming down the hall. "This is what I told you about," he said softly. The nurse stopped. She was young, maybe late 20s, with tired eyes and a badge that said Emily. I had seen her once before, but she did not know me well. "Miss Voss?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm Clara Voss." She glanced at the paper. "I'm sorry." The current authorized visitor list for overnight is Marcus Voss and Denise Carver. That's not right, Marcus exhaled. Clara, I looked at him. He said it then. Go home, Clara. She asked for family tonight. There are sentences that do not sound loud when they happen. They just keep echoing later. I looked at Aunt Denise, her mouth trembled. She stood halfway, then stopped. Denise, Marcus said. She sat back down. The nurse looked between us. I can ask the charge nurse. Please, I said. Marcus's jaw tightened. Mom specifically asked not to have conflict. I'm not conflict. Kendra looked up from her phone. Clara, maybe don't do this in the hallway. I wanted to ask her what this was. Standing there, breathing, holding soup for my dying mother. Instead, I turned to the nurse. Please write down that I was here, I said. Please write down the time. Emily blinked. Of course. And please write down that I asked to see my mother. Marcus gave a small laugh. This is exactly what I mean. Everything has to be a record with you. I looked at him for 1 second. Yes, I said. Tonight it does. I walked to the vending machine because my legs needed somewhere to go. I sat in the molded plastic chair beside it, with the green thermos between my feet. The towel around it was still warm. I could smell chicken broth every time the air conditioner pushed cold air down the hallway. People passed me and tried not to look. A man in a tan coat bought peanut butter crackers. A nurse rubbed her forehead near the water fountain. Aunt Denise walked toward me once, slow, like each step was being negotiated inside her. She stopped 6 feet away. Honey, she said. I looked up. She had been crying, real tears. That made it worse somehow. Can you tell him to let me in? I asked. She looked toward room 312. She's so fragile right now. I know. And Marcus says she got upset earlier. Did you hear her say she didn't want me? Denise pressed the tissue to her nose. That's not fair. No, I said. It isn't. For one moment, I thought she would keep walking toward the nurse's station. I saw it happen in her body, the shift, the almost. Then Marcus appeared at the corner. Denise. She closed her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. Then she went back to him. That was the moment I stopped waiting for her. Noelle arrived 40 minutes later in jeans, a sweatshirt, and shoes with no socks. Like she had left in the middle of something. She did not ask dramatic questions. She sat beside me. Have you seen her? She asked. No. Did they document it? I asked. Good. I leaned forward with my elbows on my knees. I don't want good. I want my mother. I know. That was all she said. At 2:16 in the morning, the hallway changed. I cannot explain it better than that. Nurses move differently. Quieter but faster. Marcus came out once, pale, and looked at me like I was a problem he had forgotten to solve. I stood, he said. Don't. At 2:31. Bethany came even though it was not her shift. Someone must have called her. She knelt in front of me. Clara, she said. I knew. No, I said. But not loudly. I'm so sorry. Behind her, room 312's door was open. I could see the foot of the bed. The blue blanket, Kendra's cream sweater, Marcus's hand over his mouth. I walked to the doorway. The nurse did not stop me now. Mom looked smaller than a person should look after leaving. Her mouth was soft. Her hair had been brushed back. The photo of the house was on the table beside her bed. I do not know who put it there. I know I had brought it. I touched her hand. It was still warm enough to break me. Marcus said, from the other side of the bed, she was peaceful. I did not look at him. I whispered. I was here. Noelle drove me home because I could not make my hands work around the steering wheel. She put the green thermos in my sink and rinsed it without asking. The soup slid down the drain in a pale stream, carrots and rice catching for a moment before disappearing. I slept 2 hours on the couch with my shoes on. The next days were cotton and knives, funeral home, death certificates, calls from people who wanted to know what happened, but not enough to hear the answer. Kendra texting about flower arrangements. Aunt Denise leaving a voicemail that began with, I hope you understand everyone was just trying to honor your mother's peace, which I deleted before it ended. Marcus took over the funeral arrangements like a man stepping onto a stage. At Holloway Funeral Home, he shook the director's hand and said, I've been handling most things for Mom. The funeral director, Mr. Bell, looked at his computer screen. Oh, he said. Our pre-arrangement contact is Clara. Marcus smiled. Right, she helped with forms. I was sitting 2 chairs away, wearing the black cardigan Noelle had brought me because mine was still hanging over the chair in room 312. I did not correct him. Not then, mister. Belle asked about the obituary. Marcus said, "Beloved mother of Marcus and Clara, passed peacefully surrounded by family." My pen stopped moving. Surrounded by family. I wrote the phrase on the back of a receipt from the parking garage. Marcus saw me. His eyes narrowed. After the funeral, people hugged him first. He stood beside the casket, with his hand on the polished wood, and received sympathy like an inheritance. A woman from Mom's church told him, "Your mother always talked about how proud she was of you." He bowed his head. I stood near the guest book and watched Evie Calder walk in, wearing a navy dress and flat black shoes. She signed her name carefully. Then she came to me and took both my hands. "I saw your car there every day," she said. It was the first thing anyone said that made me almost cry. "Thank you," I whispered. She squeezed my fingers. "Not here," I did not know what she meant. Marcus came over then. "Mrs. Calder," he said warmly. "Thank you for coming." Evie looked at him. "I came for Ruth," she said. It was such a small correction that most people missed it. Marcus did not. That afternoon at Mom's house, after the burial, Kendra moved through the rooms like she was measuring with her eyes. She opened the pantry. She looked at the dining room light fixture. She stood in the front bedroom and said, "This would make a nice office." I was in the hallway, holding a trash bag full of paper plates. "For who?" I asked. She turned. "Oh, I just meant generally." Marcus came in from the kitchen. "Clara, don't start." "Start what?" "We all know the house will have to be dealt with. Mom was buried 2 hours ago." His face hardened, then softened when Aunt Denise walked by. "I'm trying to be practical," he said. That word, practical. Mine when it meant labor. His when it meant taking. That evening, I went home and opened every folder I had made. Receipts, 41 days of groceries, gas, pharmacy pickups, parking, voicemails from Mom, texts from Marcus, the hospice contact sheet, the picture of the missing deed drawer, the funeral invoice with my email as the pre-arrangement contact. Then I requested the hospice visitor log. I did it formally, by email, with dates. I used Mom's authorization paperwork and my status as primary contact before the final night change. I knew what to ask for. Not medical notes. Administrative visitor records. Sign-in history. Authorized visitor changes. Noelle helped me scan everything at work after hours. She fed pages into the copier while I labeled folders. "You okay?" she asked. "No," she nodded and kept scanning. That is a kind of love, too. Not asking someone to perform being okay before you help them. The visitor log arrived 4 days after the funeral. I opened it at my kitchen table. Marcus had signed in 6 times before the final night. Kendra 3, Aunt Denise 5, me 39 times in person, plus 2 nights documented after midnight, which made the system count strangely. There were notes from staff. Daughter brought meal. Daughter updated medication list. Daughter requested chaplain visit per patient preference. Daughter present during pain consultation. Then I saw the change. Authorized overnight visitors updated at 8:44 p.m. by request of Marcus Voss. Patient resting. Family reports patient preference for limited visitors. Family reports. Not patient states. Family reports. I sat with that line for a long time. Marcus had not only blocked me. He had made himself the voice between Mom and the record. I printed 3 copies. 2 days later, the probate notice appeared in the local paper. Estate of Ruth Elaine Voss. Petition for administration. Marcus Daniel Voss. I was standing at the county office copier when Noelle brought me the page. She did not say anything. She just laid it beside my keyboard. Marcus had filed faster than grief could breathe. I called the probate office and learned there would be an initial conference the next week. Marcus's attorney had indicated that all heirs were in agreement. All heirs were not in agreement. That night, I got home late. There was a light on my porch that I had not turned on. For one strange second, I thought Marcus was there. It was Evie. She stood beside my front door with a blue envelope held flat against her purse. "Clara," she said. Something in her voice made me put my keys away without opening the door. "Is everything okay?" "No," she said. "But your mother was hoping it would be." The envelope was the soft blue color of old stationery. My name was not on the front, neither was Marcus's. Across the flap, in Mom's handwriting, were 5 words, "When he tries to speak." I could not move. Evie held it out. "Ruth gave this to me before hospice," she said. "She told me not to bring it to you while you were caring for her. She said you would try to fix everything at once and forget to sit with her. That sounded so much like Mom that I had to look away. When was this? I asked. 3 days before she moved to Briarfield. I took the envelope. It was heavier than I expected. Evie's hands trembled after I took it, as if she had been holding more than paper. She said Marcus would wait until there was a room where people had to listen to him, Evie said. She told me to wait until he tried to make it official. I did not open it on the porch. I did not open it in front of Evie. Something about Mom's handwriting made me sit first. Inside my kitchen, I placed the blue envelope on the table beside the green thermos, which was drying upside down on a towel. I washed my hands. I do not know why. Habit maybe, or respect. Then I called Noelle. She answered. What happened? Can you come over? I'm getting my keys. While I waited, I looked at the envelope but did not touch it again. When Noelle arrived, she brought coffee in a folder box from work. You don't have to open it with me here, she said. I think I do. I slit the envelope carefully with a butter knife because I could not bear tearing Mom's handwriting. There were several pages inside. A letter, a notarized document, a copy of something with a deed reference at the top, a business card from an elder law attorney named Helen Markham, 2 witness signatures. One was Evie Calder. I read the first line of Mom's letter and had to stop. My Clara, if you are reading this, it means your brother has started telling people what I wanted, without asking what I wrote down. I pressed my hand over my mouth. Noelle sat very still. I will not tell you I understood all of it immediately. Grief makes even familiar words strange. But I understood enough to know the envelope was not sentimental. It was prepared, dated, witnessed, notarized. It referred to prior estate documents. It named me. It named Marcus. It named the house. And it said in my mother's shaky but unmistakable signature that she wanted me to serve as executor. I read that line 3 times, executor. Not because of money, not yet. Because Mom had chosen my hands for the ending. There was also a paragraph I could not finish at first. Marcus has not been involved in my care except when property or appearances are discussed. Clara has been my primary caregiver, my medical contact, and the person I trust to carry out these instructions. If Marcus attempts to exclude her or claim I requested her absence, I want the record to reflect that this is not my wish. My kitchen made a small sound then, refrigerator, pipes, something ordinary continuing. Noelle reached across the table and put one finger on the corner of the paper, not touching the words. This is original? Yes. You need to call the attorney on the card. I know, and you need to not tell Marcus. I know. For once, knowing did not feel like a burden. It felt like a door. The next morning, I called Helen Markham's office from my car before work. Her assistant put me through after I gave Mom's name. Helen's voice was older, brisk and kind without being soft. I wondered when I would hear from you, she said. You knew? I knew your mother was concerned. About Marcus? A pause. About being overruled after she could no longer correct anyone. I closed my eyes. Helen confirmed that Mom had updated certain documents before hospice. She could not discuss everything until I brought the originals in and proper. Steps were taken, but she told me enough. Do not hand originals to your brother, she said. I wasn't planning to. Good. Do not argue about them in a living room. Do not photograph every page and send it around. Bring them to my office. We will make certified copies and prepare for the probate conference. I almost laughed because she sounded like every county recorder I had ever. Miss Markham, I said, I work in land records. Oh, she said. Then you understand why order matters. Yes, good. Your mother said you would. That sentence followed me through the rest of the day. Your mother said you would. Marcus texted me at lunch. Probate conference next Tuesday. 10 a.m. You need to be there and sign the consent. Don't make this harder. I looked at the message, then at the blue folder in my tote bag. I wrote back, I'll be there. He answered with a thumbs up. That was Marcus. He thought attendance was agreement. The days before the conference were the quietest kind of war. I met with Helen Markham. She reviewed the envelope at a polished wood table in an office that smelled faintly of paper and peppermint. She had silver hair, square glasses, and no patience for drama. Evie came with me to confirm how she received the envelope. The second witness was a retired notary from Evie's church, who had been present the day Mom signed. Helen made copies. She placed the originals in a flat folder. She explained what would likely happen, what might happen, and what Marcus would probably try to do. He will attack at your credibility, she said. He already does. He will say your mother was confused. She wasn't when she signed. No, I have notes from our meeting. So does my paralegal. The hospice intake was after the signing. Your mother was ill, but she was clear. I looked at Mom's signature again. It slanted downward near the end, weaker than it used to be. Helen's voice softened slightly. She was very clear about you. I nodded because speaking would have made me cry. I also picked up the hospice visitor records in person and asked for the administrative note from the final night change. Bethany met me in a small office with a box of tissues between us. She looked tired. I'm sorry, she said. You weren't the one at the door. No. But I should have checked the history before the change was accepted. I did not know what to do with an apology that sounded real. Did Mom ever say she didn't want me there? Bethany's eyes filled. No. Ruth listed you as primary. She asked for you often. The final night restriction came through Marcus as family preference. The note should have been clearer. Can you say that if asked? Yes. She folded her hands. And Clara, your mother knew you were there. I looked at her. The nurse told her you had arrived before the end. Ruth couldn't answer by then, but her breathing changed. I was in the room. That hurt and helped in equal measure. Some truths do both. On Monday night, Aunt Denise called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I answered. Clara, honey, she said, and I could hear dishes in the background. Marcus says you're being difficult about the estate. I looked at the folder box on my table. What does difficult mean? He says you won't sign. I haven't been given anything to sign yet. Well, he's trying to make this smooth. Your mother wouldn't want fighting. My mother also wouldn't want lying. Silence. Then Denise lowered her voice. I know that night was hard. I waited. I know you were hurt. Denise, did you hear Mom say she didn't want me in the room? She breathed in. That was her second almost moment. No, she said finally. The word came out small. Will you say that tomorrow? More silence. I don't want to get in the middle. You were in the hallway. That's not fair. There it was again. No, I said. It wasn't. She started to cry softly. We're all grieving. I know. Marcus is just trying to keep things together. I looked at the visitor log, at the line that said family reports. No, I said, he's trying to keep things. Denise did not answer. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with the folders stacked in front of me. For a moment, I wanted to call her back and make it easier. Tell her I understood. Give her a bridge back to me. Then I remembered her standing 6 feet away from me beside the vending machine. I left the phone on the table. The probate courthouse was a brick building with narrow windows and a flag that snapped loudly in the wind. I had been there hundreds of times for work, usually in the records wing, where the air smelled like toner and old bindings. That morning, the building felt different, not bigger, more personal. Noelle picked me up because she said parking downtown made people worse. She wore black pants, a gray sweater, and the expression of someone prepared to dislike everyone on my behalf. You have the originals, she asked. Helen has them. Copies. In the folder. Water. In my bag. Did you eat? No. She handed me a banana without looking away from the road. At the courthouse, Marcus was already there. Of course he was. He stood outside hearing room B in a dark suit with Kendra beside him, Aunt Denise on his other side, and 2 women from Mom's church nearby. His attorney was young, maybe early 30s, with a leather portfolio and the nervous energy of someone who had believed his client. Marcus looked at my folder and smiled. You brought homework. Kendra gave a tiny laugh. I did not answer right away. The hallway had brown benches, a bulletin board with legal notices, and a sign that read false statements may result in penalties. I looked at it longer than necessary. Marcus followed my eyes. Please don't make this embarrassing, he said. Noelle shifted beside me. I touched her sleeve once. Not yet. Aunt Denise would not look directly at me. Marcus's attorney stepped forward. Mrs. Voss, I'm Evan Sutter. I represent Marcus in the administration petition. My understanding is that this should be fairly straightforward. I hope so, I said. Marcus smiled wider. The church women watched us with polite hunger. I knew the look. They wanted grief, but organized. A story with clear roles. Devoted son, difficult daughter, peaceful. Paper signed before lunch. Marisol Vega, the probate registrar, opened the conference room door at 10:03. I knew her by sight from county work, though we had only spoken twice. She was short, composed, and wore a burgundy blazer. Her hair was pulled back so neatly it looked like part of her authority. "Voss matter," she said. "Come in." The room was small. Conference table, 8 chairs, water cooler, tissue box, wall clock, no judge, no drama. Just the kind of room where families tried to make grief fit into forms. Marcus chose the chair nearest Marisol before anyone else sat down. Kendra sat beside him. Aunt Denise took the chair near the wall. The churchwomen hovered until Marisol said, "Interested parties only, please," and they retreated to the hallway looking disappointed. Noelle sat behind me, not at the table. Evie was not there yet. That was part of the plan, though Marcus did not know there was a plan. Marisol began by reviewing the petition. "Marcus, Daniel Voss has petitioned to serve as administrator of the estate of Ruth Elaine Voss, alleging no valid will or controlling instruction has been presented with the initial filing." Marcus folded his hands. His attorney nodded. Marisol looked at me. "Clara Voss, you are listed as surviving child and heir. Have you reviewed the consent form?" "Not yet," I said. Marcus sighed. Marisol looked at him over her glasses. He stopped. Evan slid a paper toward me. "It simply allows Marcus to proceed so the estate can be handled efficiently," he said, "efficiently. Smooth, peace, practical. All the pretty words people use when they want you to stop reading." I looked at the paper but did not touch the pen. Marcus leaned back. "Clara, Mom trusted me to handle this." I looked at him then. "Did she?" His face changed just slightly. Kendra put her hand on his arm. He recovered. "Everyone knows I was with her at the end." Noelle made a sound behind me, barely audible. Marcus looked around the room, gathering confidence. "Clara did a lot of day-to-day things," he said. "No one is denying that. Groceries, soup, errands. But when it came to the hard decisions, Mom wanted me." I looked down at my folder. He kept going. "She got very anxious near the end, fixated on papers, receipts, logs. It wasn't healthy. That's why we limited visitors that last night. Mom needed calm." Marisol's pen paused. I noticed that Marcus did not. He looked at me with the sad brother face he had worn at the funeral. "I know you're hurt, but you need to stop punishing the family because you feel guilty." There it was, the overreach, the step too far. I raised my eyes. "What should I feel guilty for?" He spread his hands. "For not being able to face it at the end." The room became very still. Even Aunt Denise looked at him then. Marcus mistook the silence for agreement. "You sat in the hallway, Clara. You chose that. And now you're trying to turn grocery receipts into some kind of claim." His attorney shifted. "Marcus," Evan said quietly. But Marcus had the room he wanted, and he could not resist filling it. "There are no other documents," he said. "Clara has a bag of grocery receipts and a guilty conscience." I looked at Marisol. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "Before I sign anything, can the court receive an original document from a witness?" Marcus blinked. "What witness?" Marisol set down her pen. "What kind of document, Miss Voss?" "Estate instructions and related signed materials prepared before hospice." Evan sat up straighter. Marcus laughed once. "That's ridiculous." The door opened behind us. Evie Calder stepped in wearing a navy coat, her purse on her arm. Helen Markham was beside her with a flat document folder. Bethany, the hospice social worker, stood just behind them. Marcus stared like he was trying to place them in the wrong story. Evie walked to the table. She did not look at Marcus first. She looked at me. Then she placed the blue envelope in front of Marisol. "Ruth asked me to bring this when Marcus started speaking for her," she said. No one moved. Marisol looked at Helen. "I'm Helen Markham, attorney for the decedent in the preparation of these documents," Helen said. "I have the originals and supporting notes for review." Marcus pushed back his chair. "No, absolutely not. Mom was not competent to sign anything." Helen turned to him. "She met with me 3 days before hospice intake. She was ill, Mr. Voss. She was not incompetent." "You don't know what he did," Kendra said suddenly, then stopped as if the words had surprised her too. Everyone looked at her. Marcus's head turned slowly. "What?" he said. Kendra's face flushed. "I mean, you don't know what Clara told her." "I told her to eat soup," I said. It was the first sharp thing I had said all morning. Marisol opened the envelope carefully. She did not rush. That mattered. She treated Mom's last act like it deserved procedure. The papers came out one by one. Helen identified them. A signed instruction letter, a codicil tied to Mom's existing will, a property memorandum referencing the Alder Street house, a contact note, witness statements, notary acknowledgement. Evan's face lost color as he read over Helen's copy. Marcus stared at the pages like they were written in another language. Marisol read silently for a long moment. The wall clock ticked. Someone in the hallway laughed, then went quiet. A cart rolled past outside the door. Finally, Marisol looked up. "Mr. Voss," she said, "this filing is not consistent with the documents now before the court." Marcus leaned forward. "That envelope came from a neighbor. A neighbor. She's not family." Evie looked at him. "Neither was I when you wanted the spare key," she said. Aunt Denise made a small sound. Marcus ignored her. "This is manipulation," he said. "Clara works with records. She knows how to make things look official." Helen's voice cooled. "Are you alleging forgery?" Evan touched Marcus's sleeve. "I would advise, are you?" Helen asked again. Marcus looked at the notary stamp, at Mom's signature, at Evie, at me. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. That was the first silence I had ever seen beat him. Then Bethany stepped forward. "There is also a hospice administrative record relevant to the final night visitor change," she said. Marcus turned red. "That has nothing to do with probate." Marisol looked at him. "It may have something to do with the representations made in this room." Bethany gave Marisol a copy. I had read those lines so many times that I did not need to look. Primary contact, Clara Voss. Authorized change requested by Marcus Voss. Patient preference reported by family. Patient unable to confirm at time of change. Bethany's voice was steady. Ruth Voss did not tell hospice staff that Clara should be excluded. Clara had been her primary contact. The final night restriction was entered after Marcus represented it as family preference. Marcus slapped his palm lightly on the table. Not hard, but enough. She was upsetting Mom. Bethany looked at him. Ruth asked for Clara that afternoon. The words moved through me so sharply I had to press my feet into the floor. Marcus looked at Aunt Denise. "Say something." Denise's face crumpled. For the third time, she had a door in front of her. She whispered, "I didn't hear Ruth ask for Clara to leave." Marcus stared at her. It was not brave enough to undo what she had done, but it was something. Too late and too small, but something. Marisol made a note. Helen slid another page forward. Ruth's instruction also addresses the Alder Street property. Kendra went completely still. That was when I knew she had been planning more than grief. Marcus said, "The house is part of the estate." Helen said, "Yes, and the decedent's valid documents express her intended disposition and nominate Clara Voss to administer the estate." Evan rubbed his forehead. Marisol looked at him. "Counsel, do you wish to proceed on the current petition as filed?" Evan did not answer immediately. Marcus whispered, "Evan." Evan's voice was careful. "We may need to withdraw and review." Marcus turned on me then. Not loudly, not yet. "You did this." I looked at him across the table. "No," I said. "Mom did." His face twisted. "You poisoned her against me." I thought of 41 days of soup, of him asking for the deed drawer, of Mom's weak hand squeezing mine, of the vending machine humming while my mother died behind a door. I opened my folder and took out one page. Not the letter, not the codicil, just the visitor log. I placed it in front of him. "You signed in 6 times, I said. He looked down. "You changed the visitor list once." His eyes lifted to mine. "And you chose the night she couldn't correct you." No one spoke. I did not feel triumphant. That surprised me, though maybe it should not have. The truth did not make Mom alive. It did not give me room 312 back. It only stopped Marcus from building a house out of lies on top of her grave. Marisol gathered the papers with professional care. "The court will not accept consent under these circumstances today," she said. "The petition as filed requires review. Ms. Markham, please submit certified copies and any related filings. Mr. Sutter, confer with your client." Marcus stood so fast his chair struck the wall. "This is a family matter." Marisol looked at him. "Then it should not have been misrepresented in a court filing." That was the closest anyone came to raising a voice. And still, it landed harder than shouting. In the hallway, the church women were waiting. Of course they were. People who say they hate gossip often stand very close to closed doors. Marcus came out first, face tight, Kendra behind him. Aunt Denise followed. crying quietly. I came out with Noelle on one side and Evie on the other. One of the church women touched Marcus's arm. "Is everything all right?" He opened his mouth. For the first time, he seemed unsure which story to tell. Kendra answered for him. "There's been a misunderstanding." Noelle muttered, "That's one word for it." Marcus turned on me. "Can we talk privately?" I looked at him. The hallway smelled like floor polish and wet wool. Someone's phone buzzed. The blue envelope was now inside Helen's folder, no longer secret, no longer waiting. No. His eyes darted toward the women, toward Denise, toward Kendra. "Clara, don't do this in front of everyone." I almost laughed, not because it was funny. "You invited everyone." His expression changed again. Softer now, injured, brotherly. "We're still family." That was the pivot. Cruelty had failed, so love came out like a spare tire. I looked at him for a long second. "Not like that," I said. He lowered his voice. "You're going to let paperwork destroy us?" I thought of Mom's hand, Mom's signature, Mom planning with the last strength she had because she knew her son would use grief as a shortcut. "Paperwork didn't lock me out," I said. He flinched. Kendra touched his sleeve. "Marcus," he shook her off. Aunt Denise came toward me, mascara under her eyes. "Clara, honey, maybe once everyone cools down." "No," I said. She stopped. I softened my voice because I did not hate her. I was just done letting pity reopen doors that trust had already closed. "You knew I was in the hallway." Her chin trembled. "I was scared." "I know. I didn't know what to do." "You chose." She looked down. That was all. I did not need to list every failure. The hallway remembered. Over the next several weeks, the process moved with the slow certainty of offices that do not care who is charismatic. Marcus's petition was withdrawn. Helen filed the proper documents. I was appointed executor. The Alder Street house was handled according to Mom's written instructions and the property documents she had prepared. Marcus contested once, loudly, then less loudly after his attorney saw the meeting notes, witness statements, hospice records, and the timeline. People stopped asking me why I was being difficult. Some apologized, most did not. The church women went quiet around me, which was its own kind of apology. Mr. Bell from the funeral home sent me a corrected invoice copy with my name listed properly as pre-arrangement, contact. Bethany wrote a letter for the hospice file clarifying the final night visitor change. Also sent a separate note, handwritten, that said, "I am sorry we did not protect the right person's access that night." I kept that note in the folder, but not because I planned to use it. Some records are not weapons. Some are witnesses. Marcus tried 3 different versions of repair. The first was anger. He left a voicemail saying I had humiliated him and Mom would be ashamed. I saved it, then never listened again. The second was bargaining. He emailed asking whether we could split things in a way that honors everyone's feelings, by which he meant selling the house and giving him half. The third was nostalgia. He texted a picture of us as children sitting on the back steps with popsicles. Under it, he wrote, "We only have each other now." I looked at the picture for a long time. Little Marcus had one arm around me. Little me was squinting in the sun, holding my popsicle away from him because he used to bite the tops off mine when I was not looking. I did not answer. A week later, he came to the house. It was the first time I had been there alone since everything became legal. The key turned stiffly. The air inside smelled stale, like dust and closed curtains. I walked room to room, touching nothing at first. Mom's mug was still by the sink. Her robe hung on the back of the bedroom door. The hall cabinet drawer was closed. I opened it. The deed folder was back, empty. I stood there for a moment, then laughed once. Not because it was funny, because Marcus had returned the shell and thought the missing center would not matter. The doorbell rang. I looked through the front window. Marcus stood on the porch, holding nothing. No flowers this time. I opened the door but did not step aside. He looked past me into the house. "So this is it?" he asked. "What? You get everything, and I'm the villain." I felt tired then, deeply tired. "You're not the villain because Mom chose me," I said. "You're responsible for what you did." He looked down the street, then back at me. "I was scared too, Clara. I believe you." That surprised him. Maybe it surprised me. His voice softened. "Then you know I wasn't thinking clearly. I know you changed a visitor list clearly enough." His jaw tightened. There he was. "You can't hold one night over me forever." I thought of the vending machine. the cooling thermos. Aunt Denise turning away. Mom's hand already cooling when I touched it. It wasn't one night, I said. It was the night you wrote down. He looked at me like he hated the exactness of that. I'm your brother. I know. Mom would want us to fix this. I picked up the green thermos from the small table by the door. I had brought it from my apartment that morning, not knowing why. Maybe because it belonged in that house, maybe because I did. Marcus looked at it and scoffed. Still carrying that thing around? I held it by the squeaking handle. You told me to go home, I said, his eyes flicked to mine. My voice stayed quiet. I did go home, Marcus. Mom made sure I could. He understood it then. Not everything, maybe not even most of it. But he understood that the door was not opening. His face went slack for a second, then hard. Keep the house, he said. See if it keeps you warm. He walked off the porch. I closed the door gently. The house did not keep me warm. People say things like that when they do not understand what a house is after someone dies. A house is not comfort at first. It is work, dust, old mail, medicine bottles, a sweater that still smells like someone's soap, a freezer full of food they will never eat, a chair angled toward a television they will never watch. But it was also shelter. And it was Mom's last clear sentence made visible. Noelle came over that afternoon with rubber gloves, trash bags, and sandwiches. She did not say, "This must be hard," though it was. She opened the kitchen window and said, "Where do you want to start? The pantry. Good. I hate mysterious pantry items. We threw away expired cans. We kept Mom's baking tins. We found 14 packets of taco seasoning and a jar of olives from a brand that had changed labels years ago. At one point, I started crying because I found the mug she used for soup when the handled cups got too heavy. Noelle took it from my hand, washed it, dried it, and set it on the windowsill. Not hidden, not thrown away, just clean, later. Evie came through the back door, after knocking once and waiting, the way neighbors do when they are still learning new boundaries. She carried a small paper bag. "I found this in my drawer," she said. Inside was Mom's spare key on a faded plastic ring shaped like a sunflower. "She gave it to me after the first time she locked herself out," Evie said. "Told me not to give it to Marcus unless the house was on fire, and even then to call you first." I laughed. Then Evie laughed. Then all three of us stood in Mom's kitchen with tears on our faces, laughing harder than the joke deserved. I made coffee and poured it into the green thermos because the coffee maker carafe had a crack in it. We took 3 mugs to the porch. Evie sat in Mom's old chair. Noelle sat on the steps. I sat on the porch floor with my back against the railing. The hydrangea bush by the side fence had one blue bloom, just one. It leaned heavily, almost touching the ground. I looked at it for a long time. For years, I thought my job was to keep proving what I had done. I thought if I saved the receipt, answered the call, made the soup, paid the bill, remembered the appointment, and stayed calm enough, someone would finally say, "Clara, we saw you. Mom saw me late, not perfectly, not loudly, but she saw me clearly enough to use the strength she had left." I wish she had said more while she was alive. I wish I had heard her tell Marcus no. I wish room 312 had opened when I was still carrying warm soup. But I do not live in the wish anymore. I live in the house with the mint by the steps. I changed the locks. I kept Mom's porch chairs. I put my records cabinet in the front room, not because I plan to fight forever, but because I like knowing where important things are. I planted parsley in a pot by the kitchen window. I gave Evie a new spare key. I gave Noelle the mug from the windowsill, and she uses it when she comes over on Sundays. Aunt Denise sent a birthday card 3 months later. She wrote, "I hope someday we can talk." I placed it in a drawer, not the trash, not the mantle. A drawer. Marcus did not come back. Kendra drove by once in a white SUV and slowed near the mailbox, then kept going. The green thermos still squeaks when I lift it. The dent is still there. Some mornings, I fill it with coffee and take it to the porch before work, not because anyone is waiting for me to bring warmth into a room where I might not be welcome. Because I am allowed to keep some warmth for myself. That's my story. A green thermos, 41 days of soup, 1 locked hospice door, and a blue envelope my mother trusted to the neighbor who saw everything. If someone in your life only values you when you are useful, take this as your sign to stop confusing exhaustion with belonging. Keep your records. Trust the people who show up in small, steady ways. And when someone tries to rewrite what you lived through, you do not always have to shout. Sometimes you just let the right paper reach the right table. If this story found you at the right time, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Someone else may read your words and feel less alone tonight.